to first draft of a brand new TV pilot. So you can use our chat channel called TV Pilot Class to use questions and comments, or to write out your questions and comments as we go along. I will be stopping every once in a while to check this chat channel here. And in the meantime, if everyone could please keep their mics on mute, you can click the little microphone icon in the bottom left corner of the screen to mute your microphone so we don't get any background noise or anything. But we will have many times in which I'll ask people to unmute and talk with us, especially when we get to your own ideas and your pilots that you will be working on for the class. So the idea is that for this class, you're going to have to pick one pilot that you're going to want to write over the next 6 weeks. Oh, my camera's a little blurry. Hopefully it'll focus in a second. But, so yeah, by the end of class today, you're going to have to try to choose your idea and narrow down what the logline is going to be as much as you can. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but by the end of class, we'll try to get solid loglines. We have a lot of students here, so we will we'll try to go through the lecture slides pretty quickly and get to the second half of class where we will be mostly just looking at student loglines. So during the course of what we're doing today, you can just be writing on your own document. I recommend using Google Drive, but you can use a sticky note or whatever you've got. Just start writing out ideas for your logline, which is that one sentence expression of your idea. If you already know how to write a logline, then maybe you already have a head start, and if you're not sure exactly what to do, you can just watch for a bit to get a better sense of it. But by the halfway mark, we're going to be posting and sharing and getting feedback on those and trying to improve it as much as possible before next week. Let's go. All right. So here's some just audio troubleshooting tips that you can look back on if you are not quite sure why you can't see or hear or be heard. And let's share the slideshow as well, just so you guys can review these slides on your own. I'm going to post this in the TV Pilot chat channel here. There we go. So you can just browse those slides without me having to switch between them if you'd like. All right, let's look at what is Script Camp. So we are a screenwriting community that's focused on taking you from idea to first draft to more polished script. So we have lots of free classes, events, and workshops. Sorry, my cough. Just like constant itch back there. All right, we have some paid VIP member classes, boot camps, and writers' labs as well. Those are like office hours on Saturdays from 4 to 6, where you can come in with whatever questions you have or topics you want to hear more about. Here's a bit about me. I've been a repped and working Hollywood writer since 2017, when I placed in the top 10 of the Launchpad Features contest and got signed off of that script, and have since written for Creepshow, been on a couple lists, which you can see here, and have a thriller script set up at DJ2 Entertainment, which are the producers of Sonic the Hedgehog, that franchise. So I teach the boot camps and also the weekly writers lab here. What are the boot camps? We go from idea to first draft using the step-by-step practical method and 2-hour weekly class meetings, 8 weeks for the feature, 6 for TV. We did 6 for the stage play, which that course is currently over, but we have recordings of it for anyone who's a member. Rewrite takes 4 weeks, and we have a new horror thriller bootcamp, which starts this upcoming Saturday. So that is like just a crash course in horror and thriller, which is the genre that I write in the most and have the most experience in. How to enroll. You can buy any of these courses on their own if you just go to scriptcamp.net/classes. Or you can become an unlimited member, which gives you access to all of the boot camps, all of the workshops, every event that we do, every read-through, every guest event, all the stuff. So the membership comes with everything you see here. Over 70 hours of classes a month with unlimited. And you also get access to our video library, recordings of every class, private Discord channels, $100 off proofreads or consultations. And you will also get sort of free coins. We have this coin system on our server. Do we have a slide on that? Oh, maybe not as early as I thought. That's okay. And you can use those to earn table reads or little fun merchandise things like flip-flops and hoodies and things like that. But yeah, the best value is going to come from this unlimited membership. So consider signing up. You get a 2-week free trial for all of this, so you get to attend a bunch of classes for free. Sign up if you are interested in attending any more than just this first week 1 class today. Okay, so here's the schedule. Week 1 concept and logline is today, where we would just have to go over the basics and the ground rules of kind of idea to choose for the class. How is TV written? What is a pilot, and why do you write one? All these things like that. And the goal for today is to finalize your logline and to start to fill out what we call the sketchbook, which is like a collage of all your unsorted ideas for any one project that you just want to keep all in one place. Next week is on structure, and we will be going through what's called the story beats summary, or sometimes I just call it the summary, and that's going to be just all the ordered events of the script. So you're going to have to identify the structural beats, which are going to be things like the catalyst or the act break or the midpoint or these things like that, and then just put them in the correct order, and you know how each event leads into the next one. On week 3, we will be going in more detail on that same document and expanding it out into what we call scene cards, which is a full paragraph for every single scene in your script. The goal being that by the end you should know what happens on every single page of your script before you even start it. So by the time you're finished pre-writing, you should have a really comprehensive map of what happens on every single page of the script you're about to write. Week 4 is on first act, week 5 second act, week 6 third act. It's that simple. So if you're writing half an hour, you will have 10 pages or so to do a week. If you're writing an hour, you will have 20 pages or so to do a week, which, you will be slightly incentivized to just choose a shorter idea because you have a limited time to do it. The first 3 weeks are all planning and pre-writing, and we really emphasize this process of planning and pre-writing to the extent that you, like I mentioned, you should know what goes on every single page before you begin, which might be a kind of newer sort of idea to you. It might seem like you're overthinking it or over-planning, but I really recommend to get until you have the fundamentals of structure really, really, really nailed down, until you've written, 10 pilots, let's say. It can be helpful to just find a method that is very regimented and that you can become very disciplined in applying. You can always change it or modify it later on, or if maybe you hate outlining and never want to do it, then you don't have to stick with this. You can always change these and adjust them to fit your own style, and everyone has their own best way that they work. But for the purposes of these classes, we recommend that you follow along with our really, really heavy outlining, and to that end, maybe you'll learn that you work better this way, or that it's really helpful, or that it helps you finish when you've never finished something before. These things are not just like manacles slapped on you by the man to ruin your creativity. Structure is there to help you and to keep you organized and to keep you on track. So we will really heavily emphasize structure and outlining throughout Script Camp. Let's look at our next slides here. Week 1 class overview. We'll start with ground rules and just the types of ideas that you should be choosing. Moving on to TV writing basics. Getting staffed, which we won't really be focusing on. The goal of this class is not to get you staffed by the end. It takes many, 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 many years and dozens of scripts before you will even have the slightest chance of getting staffed. So don't worry way too much about that stuff now. You should mostly be focused on getting obscenely good at writing TV pilots. My process overview and Sketchbook, which is the thing that you will be starting on today, which is, again, just sort of, there's no wrong answers. It's just an unsorted list of all of the ideas that you have for a project. We'll look at time slot, format, and genre, which you should be deciding around the same time that you were deciding what your title and logline are, so it's one of these really basic things. How does the continuity and the basics of the structure for your show work? Is this going to be the kind of show that resets continuity every week, or is there going to be a larger overarching story? All these questions that are really important for us to know how your show is going to work. We'll also look at the premise versus status quo, which is that distinction between the two major narrative styles of TV. And then we'll look at loglines, which are really the focus of today. And the emphasis is going to be on compelling characters and interesting worlds in these TV loglines. There's going to be a distinction between the series logline, which is the one sentence that expresses what the entire show is about. And then we have the pilot logline, which is one sentence that just tells us what we're doing in the pilot. It's going to look a little more like a movie logline, and really has to include the same sort of things that we want in a movie logline, such as what is the catalyst that sets the story in motion, where is the sense of motivation and urgency and stakes, and all those things like that. So we'll look at the differences between those two types of loglines today. And then we will have a little time for exercises, but my guess is that we will probably spend most of our second half of class on just reviewing and giving feedback on student loglines. So do be working on your own loglines as we go. Just whatever you've got, if you can start molding and adjusting it so that it fits these specifications as we go through class, then by the time that we're posting them, you'll have a little bit of that work done already. All right, so if Pilot finished in 6 weeks, is this draft going to be good? Well, no, probably not, and that's okay. It's a first draft. Let's just move also beyond the idea that any individual script has to be good. This is all just practice. This is like lifting weights. This is going to the gym. And in order to get to those really, really good scripts, you have to get the bad ones out of the way, so to speak. So maybe tell us about yourself. What are your goals as a writer? Have you written a screenplay before? What are you hoping to accomplish? Or what's your sort of projected career path? Do you want to go into TV writing? Do you want to write movies? Just tell us a little about yourself. Anybody can feel free to use the text or unmute. What are some of your goals? Tell us about you.
Okay, I'll go first, I guess.
Go ahead.
I am Simmer. I'm very new to screenwriting, but I've been writing comics for a couple years. I wanted to get into screenwriting because it's very interesting and the format kind of makes sense to my brain. And I have written 2 TV pilots, but they're both not very good, and I didn't structure them right. So the feedback that I got is that they're both not good. So I'm hoping to learn the structure, the story beats, and yeah, just anything else that'll help me.
Cool. Yeah, just learning the ropes. That's great. And yeah, screenwriting pretty similar to comic writing format. So if you're used to writing out comic scripts, then writing out screenplays is like, they're so similar that sometimes people even turn scripts into comic scripts and then just try to get a comic going instead of a movie because it's much cheaper and easier to get that funded sometimes. So like they're quite similar, and a lot of the same skills will apply between both of them. They're obviously different. One is print and one is motion picture and video and stuff like that, but there's quite a bit in common. Thanks, Simmer. Anyone else want to tell us about yourself? What are your goals? What have you written before? What are you hoping to write?
Hey, I don't know if my mic is okay, but
you sound fine.
I'm a writer director. I just moved to New York a few months ago after film school, and I'm trying to make my own short films and keep writing more. Currently writing a limited series. I don't think it's gonna be long enough for a TV show, but still working on the first episode for that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for this class, the fundamentals of writing pilots for miniseries, limited series, or just longer run shows, they're not that different. You're pretty much doing the same sorts of things. It's just that the overall run is going to be shorter. Of a miniseries is what, like 3 to 6 episodes usually. So you don't have to spin as many plates. You don't have to have as many threads sort of strategically left hanging at the end of the pilot for one of those, but more or less it's going to be the same. Thanks for weighing in.
Yeah, I actually
go ahead.
I actually spoke with my counselor from film school, and she basically said, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea because like it's an R-rated series, and obviously not big enough for a traditional TV show. So she had her doubts about, if I do want to do something with this, it's not like people would be throwing money at it just because of the return on their investment.
Right. I mean, you just have to write a lot to get good at writing, though. So if this is your first one that you've written, or like you're just trying to improve and just trying to get going as a writer, chances are you'll have to write a bunch of things that no one funds or don't go anywhere, or like you got to get the scripts out of the way, and you got to just get the work done. So regardless of whether or not it goes anywhere, you should just pick the idea that you're most excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for weighing in. Anyone else want to tell us about what you've written, what your goals are?
I'll share.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. This is Amanda. This is my first time to this group. And I wrote a pilot a few years ago, first script ever, with a friend, and then written another script for that same show. neither of them are, award worthy. And then I tend to find it easy to write log lines for the episodes, but I haven't been able to write the log line for the show. So that it's a bit like there's so many ways to spin things. And like I find that like the show has not changed in the 7 years that I've been thinking about it, but the way that I explain it changes. And it's like I have a block, to sort of seeing, it's like that we're just setting the stage through which our story gets expressed. And so what stage is that going to be? So yeah, this is a great class to have to hear how you go about it. So
sure, yeah, and that is often the case, that just the way that you pitch something will sort of change over time. I will say, if your goal is just to primarily focus on one show and just to like sort of write one thing, you said you've been working on this one thing for 7 years. Go ahead.
Well, I should add, I mean, there's another show idea that I've started writing a pilot for as well. It was sort of like it's come back and forth. And then I converted the show into a comic strip, like little moments in the show to practice jokes and timing. And so I'm actually focused a lot on a comic strip now, building out the character and the world that way. So it's really helpful. And so now I'm kind of circling back to the TV show idea. Whoops, sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. My recommendation would just be for this class in particular, because this is just a 6-week course that goes by pretty quickly. We would usually recommend that you pick an idea that you're not as attached to, or you haven't been working on for that long, or maybe just come up with some new thing just for this.
And that's my thought too, actually. Right. The rewrite I might do for that one, but for this, I have another. But it's still good to just learn. Just the art of log lines is always a good thing. Sure,
yeah, of course. I'll get more into the sort of like guidance and suggestions on types of ideas to pick, but in general, just for everybody, not just for Amanda, my recommendation is to steer you towards ideas that you are not as attached to, things that you feel like you can actually do in 6 weeks, that you won't get kind of stuck on getting it just right or getting it perfect, or if it's something you've invested a lot in. Sometimes people get hung up and a lot of us are perfectionists, and we won't be happy with something until it's exactly like we wanted it to be. But so rarely when you're first starting out can something be exactly like you want it to be.
That makes a lot of sense, and I agree. Take something that you almost don't care about to practice on and screw up with.
Right, yeah, exactly. Because if we concede the fact that you'll have to write 100 bad scripts before you can start writing really good scripts, then it's like you have so much freedom to just do whatever you want. So yeah, that's my general guidance there. But glad that you have at least written some pilots before and have some experience and just are excited to continue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Does one more person want to weigh in and tell us anything about what you're hoping to do, what you've written before, things you're hoping to write?
Yeah, this is Chan. Hi. I was just going to say, I've written a couple of scripts now for the stage, but I just had no idea how to write for the screen, and I just had a couple ideas floating in my head, so that's kind of why I'm here, is just to figure out, how to format it differently and how it, what considerations you have when you're writing for TV.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah, and there's a lot of crossover between stage and TV writers. Sometimes playwrights get scouted to write for TV shows, especially if they are in New York. Then a lot of the time people who are looking to staff TV will be going to one-man shows, comedy, plays, and stand-up and stuff like that. So there can be, it's not impossible to move from one world to the other. All right, thanks, guys. Good to hear there's a good variety of sort of experience levels and goals here. We are open to all experience levels, and if this is your very first script you've ever written, that's fine, or if you've written a bunch before, that's also totally cool. The idea is we'll sort of meet you wherever you are and just try to get this pilot over the finish line. And if you sign up, I mean, you can attend other boot camps after this and try to get more scripts done. You can be in as many as you'd like, but Nacho and I, who run the camp, usually recommend you just do one at a time. We've never really seen anyone able to complete multiple boot camps simultaneously, although it has been attempted many times. Generally, you just want to be writing one script at once. All right, ground rules. So no true stories, anthologies, soaps, rewrites, or adaptations. Like we're just talking about, this is for newer ideas that you are more excited about and less attached to. Don't do time travel. just believe me. Every time I beg people to believe me not to do time travel. Probably don't do a historical unless it's something that you have already done some research into, or it was your college major, or you've done a lot of reading in the subject, or something like that, just because the more research that you have to do, the more difficult it will be to write a script in 6 weeks. Get used to the idea of sharing your work with me and with your fellow students and everyone, even at these early stages, despite the fact that it can be difficult to hear these big notes at those early stages. You want to get used to needing to, like, adjusting as you go and receiving feedback, especially if you want to work in TV. Your early ideas might get shot down or modified, and you might be forced to change them constantly, and in order to appease the higher ranking writers and the showrunner and all these things. So you got to get used to it. If you want to do this, you have to share work, even if it's not done, even if it's not exactly perfect. If you want to continue in the boot camp past this one class, so it's fine for this class, but for the subsequent classes, please use a real name instead of a username. You can't use screen names in the industry, so you can use your middle name or a nickname if you really want to, but you've got to use something that sounds like a name to continue past this first week. All right, TV writing basics. Let's just go quickly through this so that we have as much time as possible just to get to the brass tacks of what we're working on. So, TV shows are written by staffs. The staffs consist of staff writers, which are the lowest ranking writer, that are overseen by a hierarchy of writing producers, all of whom are overseen by the showrunner, who's like the heart and brain of the show. The number of staff writers can vary anywhere from 1 on some rare occasions, like, sort of more prestige shows like True Detective, up to 2 to 3, maybe on limited series like Fargo, all the way up to 15 plus on Big Sketch or Late Night or things like that. So comedy typically has way more writers. Getting staffed, there's a couple ways to do it. There's many ways to do it. It's almost it's an endless list that is impossible to grab hold of any one of these things, and it's changing all the time. So it's very nebulous and tricky how to get involved in TV. The main tracks are going to be start as a writer's PA, meaning you have to probably start as an office PA, and then after several years of that, be promoted to writer's PA. Then after several years of that, be promoted to writer's assistant. Then after years of that, be promoted to showrunner's assistant. I won't really be able to help all that much with that track just because I didn't do any of that. The one show that I've written on was an anthology, so there wasn't even a standard room format for it. And we have some other guests who are able to give more insight into this path than I can. I just am not an assistant and have not done it for very long. The other track is sort of just get obscenely good at writing. Pilots, of course, primarily, but as well as plays, stand-up books, web shows, features, or just anything else to build out your portfolio and get attention and stand out, because, like I mentioned, they do sometimes scan these other channels or go see one-man shows in New York in order to see who do we maybe want to staff for an upcoming comedy series. There's really just no point in getting the meetings, though, unless you are a phenomenal writer. So becoming a phenomenal writer should always, always, always be your first step. Before you do that, none of the other things matter. You don't have to worry about getting staffed, budget levels, any of these other things. Just write whatever you want if you're at the beginning of your career, and do that until you get really undeniably excellent. You also need to be reading a lot. So read at least one professional script every week. Ideally, I say read 3 of them. But 1 pro pilot or 1 blacklist feature every week, minimum. You should also try to get a manager. You can do this through contests, fellowships, or other accolades and just networking, but your mileage might vary if you're not in LA. Have your manager submit your portfolio during staffing season, and then really nail the staffing meetings, and then you can be staffed on a show without having been an assistant first. That's another track. There's also other tracks, some that I might not even be aware of, and some that might not even exist yet and might exist next year or something like that. So really, there are many ways in. There are many roads in. Many of them are quite hard to find or hard to access, so you can only control so much, and the main thing you can control is your own skill level as a writer, and so you just have to be better than all the competition, because there is a ludicrous amount of competition to do this. So you need to be, I often say things like, you don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and read scripts before work in the morning and mark them up and take notes. You don't have to stay up late to get in extra writing time, but you're competing with everyone who's doing those things. So if you're not doing those things, are you better than them without doing those things? Yeah, that's the question. So you have to The only thing you can control is your skill level and how hard you're working. So you need to put the years in up top to become a fantastic writer before you even begin to worry about anything else in this entire field. Okay, so joining a TV staff means you're being in the room with the same people for 12 hours a day for several months. So you need to be good in a room as well and have excellent social skills. This is a super, 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 super social job. Writing features is also pretty social, not as social as TV writing, where you're actually physically in rooms with people for a long time. You need to be extroverted and good at receiving feedback gracefully and giving notes well and with critical, constructive feedback. Able to quickly assess the problems and ideas and to find solutions and not always just be someone who's shooting stuff down, but in fact be someone who says, hey, I know something that might work better instead. To riff off other people's ideas and collaborate well. Basically, this is not a job for quiet, introverted writing at home. This is extremely social. So just be nice and be cool and be presentable and respectful and give yourself a big leg up by just being a good person. Also, if you want to write for TV, you should plan to move to Los Angeles. But you don't need to until you have become a fantastic writer, so maybe several years. Looks like we have some questions in chat. Trin says, I was hoping to do a spin-off of another show that's an adaptation, correct? Is that completely out of the question, or can I still attempt it? What's the caution with why I wouldn't want to do that for this class? The reason I caution people not to do adaptations is the same reason I caution them not to do true stories or historical anecdotes or things like that. It's because the more you feel the need to get something right or to adapt something properly or to do it justice, the more it will hold you up from just finishing in 6 weeks. Writing a spin-off of another show would, in fact, count as adaptation or fan fiction, and it shouldn't generally be the focus of what you're doing. If you want to write for TV professionally, you should be writing original pilots. If you really want to just practice or have fun and write an episode of a show that you like, you can do those and enter some fellowships with them. Those are called spec episodes. And we'll talk in just this slide about what these different uses of the word spec mean and what the different types of episodes you might write might be. But generally, all you want to be writing are original pilots. Almost anything else doesn't really help you. Okay, so spec is a weird term that refers to several different separate things depending on the context. Spec stands for speculative. In features, a speculative script is one that you've written on your own that you've not been commissioned to write or paid to write by anybody. You're going to use that to try to get reads and meetings and maybe to try to get the spec made. In TV, a spec episode is like a fan fiction episode of an existing show that is currently on the air, critically well liked in either a long-running, more elemental show like The Simpsons or perhaps something in its second to fourth season that is an up-and-coming, show that people are reading and watching. These are rarely needed nowadays. Pretty much only useful for practice and fun and entering fellowships, certain fellowships. And then a spec pilot is usually just called a pilot. They don't often call them original pilots. If we say pilot, then we assume you mean original spec pilot. That's a first episode of a theoretical show that does not exist and probably won't. So there's absolutely no point in writing more episodes than just a pilot ever. Nobody's going to read more than just a pilot. And best case scenario, they love your show. They want to buy it from you. They're going to have you change and develop a lot of things. So you don't want to write more episodes than just the pilot. It will only work against you. You're going to use this as a writing sample to enter contests and fellowships and to get reads and meetings and to just try to get attention as a TV writer. Let's see, we have some questions in chats. I've seen a few managers and staff writers say the move to LA won't really be that important anymore, especially after the pandemic. How vital do you think is making the move to LA? So now that it's hard to say the pandemic is over or whatever because obviously the disease is still around. But now that the worst of it is, at least in people's minds, in our rearview mirror, people are drifting back towards doing more in-person rooms. And generally in Hollywood, writers prefer to all be in the same physical place when working together on the same thing. That means that in a year or two, my guess is that almost every room will be back to in-person. There will be some holdouts that will be like, we like it. We like doing all remote, or maybe their staff has just gravitated to different parts of the country for some reason. But for the most part, in just a few years, you're probably going to have to move to LA to be a TV writer. If you want to write for TV, then you should plan on that, after you've become really, really, really good. So don't worry about it before. It won't really help you that much to come here before you're really good. But you might want to consider it if you're, you know, if you don't have any attachments, you are, you know, maybe you don't have a family to worry too much about, or like a long established career or something like that. If you're at the point where you can just move to LA and start getting better at TV writing and networking and things like that, you can. I mean, that's what I did. In 2015, I moved here right after college, the summer after college. So just like a couple weeks after graduating. And yeah, I've been here since. So you can move here whenever. I would plan on moving here if you want to write for TV. I think it's still pretty important. All right, a little about structure. I don't think I want to go over structure at the moment. All right, let's look at idea to first draft. So this is the process. Every time, no matter what I'm writing, I always follow these steps. One is the log line. That's the one-sentence expression of the idea. Then you move to Sketchbook. That's an unsorted, unorganized collage, basically, of all your inspirations and influences and bits of research and all your ideas for characters and lines of dialogue and maybe scenes. You then are going to write out the story beat summary, which is a list of all the events that happen in the script in the general order that they should occur. You expand that into scene cards, which is a full paragraph for every single scene in the entire episode, and then you will go to pages, which is an industry term that you should start remembering and using. Go to pages means we move from the outlining and pre-writing phase into actually formatting things and writing out full scenes and dialogue and stuff. So up until you go to pages, you don't actually need to write out any scenes, format anything, or write any single line of dialogue. That's step 5 of 5, though. So we spend a lot of time on preparation and planning and pre-writing and getting those things established and knowing the more you can plan what's going to happen in every single moment of the script before you start it, the less you will be in the dark and struggling to find what's supposed to happen in these scenes or what is the narrative point of this moment. It's supposed to help you get through to the end, regardless of whether it's good or not. Again, it probably won't be that good, and that's fine. Your goal is to get really efficient and organized at conceiving, executing, and finishing things. That should be your primary goal when you're getting started. You just need to write thing after thing after thing and not worry way too much about if anything is amazing or not. We have a question in the chat from Simmer. How important is writing a series Bible along with your pilot, if at all? Basically, not at all. Not really important. You hardly ever need to do that. People would only want to check out the Bible if the pilot absolutely blew their minds. And until you've written probably at least 1 dozen pilots, you're not going to be writing anything that's going to blow anyone's mind. So on a practical level, you almost never need to write a Bible unless someone's interested in making the show. The only time that I've ever had to is when a director came on board and was like, wait, but where does the show go? So then over the weekend, I wrote up a quick Bible, and she saw it and was like, oh, okay, great. I get it. So yeah, you should not really focus on it, and you should spend the energy moving on to the next pilot, generally. All right, let's go to our next slide here. Sketchbook. Remember, this is a place to collect your ideas, sketches, and notes, and develop your story. Characters, snippets of dialogue, setting or locations, themes, anti-themes, premise scenes, ideas for the ending, photos, drawing, or anything that inspires your writing, and also just specific rules of the world that you are dropping us into. So if you're writing a show about lawyers, you probably have to learn the basics of how courtrooms work, if you don't already know. Or like if you're writing a police show, you should probably understand the different ranks and the different command structures, and you should start, doing a little research. Ideally, you're not picking an idea that requires way too much research, but enough that you can at least, as a big fan of those sorts of shows, reasonably figure out the basics of how the reality of that setting is going to function. If you're writing sci-fi or fantasy, then your world might have really specific rules that you have to nail down and always abide by. That is the kind of thing that would go in a Bible if you were writing one, but you just don't really have to, so put it in your sketchbook for now. Just the bare essentials. Whatever comes to mind, you're collecting it all. There's no wrong things to include in the sketchbook. You can always drop by the lab if you need more help with these. That's, again, Saturdays from 4 to 6. I think I just went over the basics. We don't have to look at an example. I think you guys get the idea. Just put all of your ideas into the sketchbook. So you can make that now if you have not made it already. Go to Google Drive or just Word if you truly insist, and make a new document. Although I should say, if you're using Word or anything besides Google Drive and screenwriting software such as Final Draft or Writer Duet, then you should know that the only documents that we should be sending around or sharing on the server will be PDF or a Google Drive link that you have turn sharing on. If you don't turn sharing on, then we won't be able to access or read it. So don't be sending docx files around or Word docs or anything else like that. Stick to either PDF or Drive. All right, so go ahead and make your sketchbooks now and start filling those out as we talk for the next 20 minutes, and then we will start to post those log lines. So be working on yours if you have not already put something together. Go ahead and make your sketchbook now. And let me just stop to see if I have any questions so far before I continue. Okay, let's continue. So, Sketchbook can have these things at the top. You can put the title, if you don't know the title, and make something up, or just put untitled blank whatever show for now. Format, that's going to be 60-minute, half an hour. Those are basically the choices for a time slot. And then you have premise or status quo, which we'll go more into soon, but that's basically does your show reset continuity after every episode like The Simpsons or Family Guy or Law & Order? Or actually, I think Law & Order, procedurals typically have general character growth and change and things like that, but for the most part, it's going to be case of the week, so pretty close to it on that. So maybe procedural, you could just write procedural next to it. But in any case, the idea is most shows are going to be premise or status quo. Premise being a show that has some larger overall narrative arc, like a movie, like Lost or Ozark or any of these things. And then status quo would be a show that you can watch them in any order at all. There isn't actually going to be substantial development between episodes. Something like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Though from, season to season, sometimes there are, that season where Mac gets really fit or whatever. But for the most part, you can watch that show in any order. We're not actually building really to any kind of climax or there just is not the expectation that we're unveiling some larger mystery or working towards some bigger, larger goal. It's just going to be episode by episode. So sitcoms are almost always going to be status quo. We'll go more into this in just a minute, though. So, genre. Don't pick more than 2 genres to combine. Once you combine too many flavors, it starts to just feel like no flavor at all. Series logline. That's one sentence that describes the world, the main character, and probably both. It can be broader in scope and requires a little less urgency than the pilot logline, which should essentially read like a movie, emphasizing urgency and the main character's goal in the pilot episode. So, I would, on your sketchbook, type in these things: title, format, genre, series, pilot. And start filling these things out as you decide on them. If you have a few different ideas for different shows, hopefully today we can help you make that choice. If you post up to 3 log lines, we can help you choose them today. All right, time slot and format details on this. 30 minutes or 60 minutes, that's the very basics. I think we know, we've all probably watched a lot of TV by now, and we know that almost everything fits into one or the other of these. There's going to be some exceptions, like I've been watching a lot of Adult Swim cartoons, and those are about 10 to 15 minutes. There's 70 plus minutes on some limited series, or you might get this weird variable length on modern streaming shows that are just sort of the Wild West, so there's no actual accounting for how that's going to work. But for the most part, if you need to show that you can write within a structure and that you can follow the rules, so pick 30 minute or 1 hour. 30 minutes are going to be 30 to 34 pages long. These are usually comedic and highly episodic, but not always. There's a lot of exceptions to both of those things nowadays. You can do any genre in half an hour, and we've seen almost every genre done in half an hour. Some are more rare than others. I mean, you don't see a lot of horror, dramedy, dark comedy, thriller, or drama in half hour, but it's possible, so why not just give it a shot? You should be picking a weirder idea that you are less attached to, and you just want to try stuff anyway, so might as well if that sounds interesting to you. Then we have 60 minutes. That's going to be 60 to 65 pages long, so it's twice as much work to do in the same amount of time, but if that's what you want to do, that's what you must do. And those can be pretty much anything except for comedy. The only thing that we don't really see is hour-long comedy. I don't exactly know why. It might be that just the pace and density of laughter in I think a lot more people would be willing to watch 4 half-hour episodes of a comedy show than they would be willing to watch an hour-long comedy, weirdly. It's just how we're trained and how the media landscape looks, and just the expectations that people have. I think the thought is that comedy is much harder to sustain. Like, comedic TV premises are much harder to sustain over the course of an hour. So that's the one thing I would say probably don't write, but if there's a lot of exceptions where people will do dramedy or like dark comedy or a sci-fi fantasy show with a heavy comedic tone in an hour show. So you can sort of fudge it. I mean, there's no actual rules there. You just have to write something you're excited about. I want to go right to my thing on genre, just because I think it's more fun than the boring format stuff. Where's my genre slide? Don't I have one? Here it is. Okay. So yeah, let's go into genre, and let's maybe tell us the genre that you're thinking of. I mean, there's only so many choices. I know it might seem kind of difficult to define some of these, but that's where it's going to come down to you maybe perhaps having to be a little reductive in describing what the show is. I mean, I think the example I often come back to is Supernatural on CW. I mean, is that a fantasy, sci-fi, action, adventure, mystery, thriller, horror with some comedic elements? Yes. But you have to just pick two things, or else we're going to be confused as to what it is. So, for the most part, we would say that's a fantasy, mystery, thriller show. There's action in it. There's horror sequences in it sometimes. There's aliens in it and sci-fi elements, and sometimes there's almost like crime drama type elements in it. But you just have to pick two things or we won't know what we're getting into. You might have to just reduce and combine a little bit and just simplify the idea of what your show is so that we know what we're getting into. There's no show that you cannot define in two genres, or there's no show that you would need more than two genres to really actually describe or pitch to somebody. So let's look at the shows here, and I think we know that I think these are all somewhat familiar to us. These aren't exactly brand new. These have been out for a while, or some of these are even over, but we get these are, really famous shows that I'm sure many of us have heard of. Let's look at the genres and just determine what these things are. I think we know Game of Thrones, fantasy drama, Big Bang Theory, sitcom, Walking Dead, horror, How I Met Your Mother, sitcom, Supernatural, mystery thriller, sort of procedural fantasy, Vampire Diaries, fantasy drama, I think, Modern Family, sitcom, Mentalist, crime, procedural, Family Guy, comedy. So you guys get the idea that, like, it's the goal is not to sort of show off or confuse, like, you don't want to confuse people with your genre. It should be a pretty straightforward promise, because that's the primary thing that a genre is. It's a collection of promises that you're making, and certain things that the audience would be expecting or looking for are the types of thrills that we're going to be getting. Do we have any questions on genre, or maybe you're not sure what genre your show is, or just any questions or comments on this? Okay, great. Let's go back to boring stuff quickly then, and let me check the time. Okay, we are at 11:45, so in 10 to 15 minutes we will be posting your log lines, so do be filling out the sketchbook as much as you can while I'm talking. So time slot and format, I think we all hopefully understand this. Any questions about this? Okay, cool. Oh, here's a question. Are we going to be sharing log lines in the chat? Yes, that's right, Amanda. We will be doing that. So I would just be sketching it out and typing out what you've got on your sketchbook at the moment, and then you'll be copying and pasting it into this chat channel in like 10 minutes. All right, let's go more into... Oh, here's just some examples of TV Pilot page counts and time slot and format. You can see that premium cable is going to be slightly different from basic cable. It's going to be like a few more pages. Generally, the rules are you want to, like... normally the rule is going to be... the rule of thumb is like it's going to be a page a minute. That's not always true, as you can clearly see here. Stranger Things, 65 pages, 47-minute show. House of Cards, 65 pages, 55-minute show. So it's really variable. Generally, though, you can see that the 65 is going to be around the upper range. The leftovers would be an exception here at 72 minutes. Normally, most pilots are not that long. So yeah, 60 to 65 for a hour long, 30 to 35 for a half hour. Premise for Status Quo. Premise is more like a long movie. We need to watch the episodes in order to get the full story. The characters change more over the course of the series. Status Quo, every episode resets the character back to how things were before. You can tune in and watch these in any order. The characters are going to change very little, or very, very gradually, or maybe not at all, and it's fine. Loglines, TV versus features. All right, so feature loglines are going to emphasize the protagonist's goal. Pilots have two log lines, the series and pilot. The series doesn't really have to emphasize the main character's goal in an urgent way as specifically. You're going to be conveying unique characters, situations, and story worlds that promise many episodes. So the series logline can be a little more general. The story engine is something that should be evident through the series logline, though, and that's an idea that I'm going to add a whole slide on for the next time we do this, but the story engine is a kind of intangible machine that is comprised of several different parts. It's just basically whatever is going to be fueling stories and creating conflicts and creating episodes for years to come. So it's like a combination of several things. We can't just point to one thing and say, that's the story engine. The story engine is comprised of, perhaps, a relationship, a point of conflict, a web of characters that we believe will be engaging in interesting conflict that will be able to last a long time. It's not something that is all going to just be resolved in one night. So yeah, story engine is a sort of difficult to define thing, but it's something that we really feel if it's not there. And basically, if it feels like there's not enough track for a whole show to run on, we might say, I don't quite see what the engine is. So make sure that it feels like your show can continue after the first episode. Even if it's a status quo show, we should at the very least understand, okay, this setup has landed in such a configuration that there could be unlimited more mini-movies like I just watched within the same setup of characters. So it shouldn't feel like everything's been resolved or that things are finished at the end. A pilot is not like a complete story. Status Quo pilots are a little closer to being a complete story because it has its own little beginning, middle, end thing of the week, but you should suggest there will be many more little stories like this to come. So a pilot logline is more similar to feature. It has the inciting incident, the protagonist, what do they want, what's in their way, those basic things that are just, we're talking about just half an hour or an hour of story. So you've got to give us those basic motivation, stakes, and urgency. The format for that is going to look a little bit more like this. When inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict before or else stakes. So a little bit more like a movie. We'll come back to this in a minute. All right, so what are we trying to do with loglines? A series logline is going to emphasize, again, the compelling character and the intriguing world they live in, maybe both. A logline should always imply a show that's visual and dynamic and about people doing stuff. The primary action should be tracked through tangible goalposts. It should not be a show about people sitting around thinking about stuff or discussing stuff or wondering about stuff. We want to avoid these nebulous finish lines and intangibility. So showcase a unique and fascinating hook as well. And that's going to be a sense of irony or a new or different POV, some variation of interesting elements, or perhaps something unfamiliar and something more familiar. We talk about this idea of the bridge sometimes, where you start with something that we understand and then use that to take us somewhere new. Have an element of the familiar mixed with something fresh and unique and original. The main emphasis right now is not really on originality. If you're newer at this especially, it's better for you just to write and finish stuff than to worry, is this unique enough? Is this going to stand out enough? Is this a good enough idea? You really just need to be conceiving, executing, and finishing things. So don't worry way too much about being original right now. Just write stuff. Okay, so loglines should make it clear the story has an audience, and they should give us a main character or world that's rich with story potential, and also clearly distinctify between premise or status quo. Is this going to be a singular journey, like a long movie? If so, it should feel like it, and it should feel like a very long uphill road that is not going to be easily resolved in one episode or one season. Or is this going to be a series of episodic situations, which would be more like a status quo? Let's look at some series loglines. Here's a premise show. So when we post the loglines today, you're going to include these basic information pieces. What am I saying? Information pieces. These basic facts. So, premise or status quo. What's the genre or mashup of genres? Ozark is a premise, crime drama, that's 1 hour long. So those are the essentials that you should post first when you're posting your logline. Title, genre, format. Here's the logline. A fast-talking financial advisor drags his family from Chicago to the Missouri Ozarks, where he must launder $500 million in 5 years to appease a drug boss. Fantastic premise series logline here. We have an interesting and specific main character that is described in such a way that we know the tactic that he is going to be using throughout the show to solve his problems. He's a fast-talking financial advisor, so he's going to be using charisma and his knowledge of finances in order to solve problems and get away with criminal hijinks. We understand the location of the show and the sort of change from one place to the other. They're from this world, and now they're in this world. So they live in the Ozarks now. He must launder $500 million in 5 years. Tells us a peek of it gives us a peek of the scope of the whole series. It's probably going to be around 5 seasons, and or 4 or 5 years. I think that's exactly what it. Maybe I think they're doing a 2-part 4th season or something like that. But you get the idea. That's basically what I thought it would be based on this logline. To appease a drug boss, that's the antagonist, and also the main obstacle for the main characters, the thing that's going to be standing in their way and causing issues for them throughout the show. So, strong story engine, really evident from just this one sentence. We have a longer-term goal that's going to take a long time, and it's going to be a very uphill, difficult journey to finally get there. We have a fascinating main character that is rife with interesting conflict and interesting tactics, and we have the main source of opposition, the antagonists that are going to be fueling episodes with whatever problems they cause. A lot here, and this is one of my favorite premise loglines, so study this well if you're doing this kind of show. All right, let's look at a Status Quo. Blackish, Status Quo comedy, half an hour. And this is a sitcom that was on for many years, but just ended a year or two ago, I think. A black family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity while raising his kids in a predominantly white upper-middle-class neighborhood. So, what's the goal for that one? I don't really know. There isn't really one. And series loglines don't have to emphasize a character goal as much, though obviously with the Ozark we just talked about, there is a very strong and clear goal with really clear stakes. But this is a Status Quo comedy. We have to just really outline what the sorts of conflicts that the episodes are going to be about. So you can be a little broader, a little vaguer, but don't think in terms of vague, like, I want to keep secrets from the audience and not tell them what they're going to get. This is telling us the sorts of conflicts they're going to revolve around issues of race and culture and class. And we have the arena, the specifics of the arena that it's going to take place in an upper middle class neighborhood. So we see the clash and the contrast, and the story engine is just evident from this one sentence. And last one, we'll do Breaking Bad, which is a premise crime drama, 1 hour long. A high school chemistry teacher, we might say something like a meek high school chemistry teacher or something like that, just to suggest what his development is going to be. But diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer, turns to manufacturing and selling meth to secure his family's future. Okay, so yeah, not as great as the Ozark one, but this definitely has a lot of the essentials there. We typically want to include just a little bit of description for your main character to understand the person that we're going to be watching, because the main character is a really big appeal of any story, but, if you want someone to tune in for years of watching this one person, then they have to be interesting. Diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer, sort of an inciting incident there. Manufacturing and selling meth, that's going to be the main action of the show, and presumably the criminal antics that surround that business in order to secure his family's future. So we understand, okay, his family are going to be major characters in this too. So you really only have to mention the main character or maybe the antagonist. Sometimes if there's a central relationship or something like that, that might want to come up in the series logline. But I hope that you can see from these that we are just suggesting the types of conflicts that the show will be about. If there is some big overarching goal in the distance, then we should know what that is, but it should be pretty clear what we're going to be doing on an episode-by-episode basis. Any questions on series loglines? Amanda asks, does animated versus live action, is that considered part of format or genre? You can note it, but it's not going to really change anything. I mean, you write it in the exact same way if it's animated or live action. The expectation is that animated shows will be half hour long and either comedy or action adventure, like, I don't know, Justice League, or they might be like, American Dad or The Simpsons or something like that. That's not always going to be the case, or kids shows. That's the other sort of assumption. Not everything has to be like that, and especially for this course, you should just be kind of trying something that you think is interesting. So you can just say it's animated when you describe it, but you're not going to write it any differently. Okay. Any questions on this? I'm going to go into pilot loglines for a few minutes, and then we will be sharing in the chats. Okay. I'll go into these last couple slides for now. If you have a question, feel free to type it. But pilot logline looks like this. If you don't, what am I saying? You don't have to actually follow every single piece of this every time. But these are the questions that we're going to have. And if you don't follow this exact format, then there might be some information missing that will just be asked of you right away. So we want the inciting incident. That's what we would like to know for the pilot. When this thing happens that sets the story in motion. This can be a coincidence. This might be a character getting their job of the week. You know, when they're assigned to take out this supervillain, the superheroes must do this before this. Or it might be when he gets a job to solve this kind of case, if it's a thing, case of the week kind of show. An adjective protagonist, that adjective should be a word that describes your main character in such a way that we understand what is linking them to the events of what's going on in this, or what is a specific tactic, limitation, flaw, anything that's going to inform how that character goes through the world and solves their problems. They must conflict. That's going to be the interesting, exciting visual thing that you're doing primarily through the second act, or if it's a 5-act show, second through fourth act, the middle of the show, basically. Or else or before stakes. That's the what bad thing will occur if they don't accomplish their goal. Why do they have to do this? Like, why is it so important? And it should be as important as you can make it for your genre. It doesn't have to be life and death and everything. I mean, many genres don't have life and death as the stakes at all, but the stakes should be as high as is appropriate. If you're doing a romantic tragedy, it might be divorce or death of your loved one or something like that. So you can push it as much as you want. TV, the stakes don't have to be as monumental as features for the most part, just because we understand your character has to actually remain relatively intact throughout the run of the show. So horror especially can be a bit tricky when you're like, or else he'll die. It's like, well, this is a 5-season show, though. He's not actually going to die in any of these episodes, is he? So, but the illusion is there, and you have to be able to maintain that illusion. And, on an episode-by-episode basis, more or less convince us that the character could die this time. Any questions on pilot logline? Okay, let's...
Quick question. Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. Yep, I hear you fine.
Are pilot loglines, are they very similar to movie loglines? They're kind of the same format, right?
That's right, yeah. It looks pretty much the same, and it should feel motivated in the same way. So, like, we should see the thing that is... We want to know the thing that's setting the story in motion. So that first really big inciting incident around, like, 10 to 10-ish minutes into your show, that should be really clear in the logline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, let's see some student loglines. So post your title, genre, format, and time slot, and then the series and pilot, whichever you have. If you only have one or the other, it's okay. If it's not totally done, that's fine. And if you're trying to post or choose between multiple different ideas, then you can post them all, and we'll help you choose between them up to, I don't know, 3. I don't know. If you can't narrow it down to 3, then maybe do that on your own. Then we'll help you pick. All right, let's see it. What have you guys got? Thank you, Simmer. Let's see a few posts in our... There we go. Look at that. So when we get like 3 of them posted, then I'll start calling on folks, and you should be ready to unmute and answer questions about your idea, and receive some early feedback to help you adjust it a bit before next week. And if you are still unclear on any of the basics, we can... or maybe you're not to the point where you think you can even write a logline yet, just try to get this done by next week, and then that will be the basis that you're working off of for the rest of the course. All right, other loglines. I think some other folks already posted some a minute ago. So Lazima posted one. Thank you, Lazima. Who else? Carmen posted 2 of them. Thanks, Carmen. If you guys who have posted before could repost them just so we have them all in the same area of the chat, I think that might help organize us a bit. Anyone else have a logline to share? Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Lazima. Okay, so we have 3 up. Let's start going through, or we have 4 up, I think. Let's look at a couple of these. You can continue to post them in the chat as we go. I'll try to get to as many as I can. So let's start with similar with You're Not Anonymous. I think we may... Did we look at... did you bring this one up before, maybe in the intro class? This is the hacker one, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, why don't you read it out for us? Go start off with the title, format, and genre.
Okay. Wait, can you guys hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. All right. The title is You Are Not Anonymous. It's premise-based. It's 60 minutes. It's a crime mystery. And the series logline is: a paranoid college student turns into a vigilante hacker, take down rich, powerful people who are supposedly untouchable. And the pilot logline is: when a college student discovers horrific secrets on his professor's computer, he must cover his tracks before he is caught by the authorities or worse.
All right. Thanks for that. Let me paste that into a document here just so I can make little changes and move things around. Okay, so great that you have both a series and pilot logline. Let's look it over one more time. So, a paranoid college student turns into a vigilante hacker to take down rich, powerful people who are supposedly untouchable. Rich, powerful people who are supposedly untouchable. But I think how is he choosing his targets though?
I haven't gotten to that part yet. His first episode is just about him discovering the stuff on his professor's computer, and then he's trying to cover up his tracks.
Okay. So, because I would think that I'd want to know what's actually motivating him to do this a little bit in the series logline. I don't think he's just trying to take down people because they're rich and powerful, is he? These are rich and powerful people who have done bad stuff, right?
Yeah, they do terrible things and they get away with it.
Okay, so maybe try to phrase it in a little bit more of so that we see why he's doing this. He doesn't have some vendetta against people with money for some reason. I think you're saying he's taking down terrible, rich and powerful people who nobody else can. Nobody else can confront. Okay, so when a college student discovers horrific secrets on his professor's computer, he must cover his tracks before he's caught by the authorities or worse. What's worse?
The worse is he dies and his death is covered up.
Oh, so you're saying the professor is part of some secret society or something?
Yeah, like his professor. Once he turns his professor into the authorities, his professor gets killed and it's covered up as a suicide. So he's thinking
okay.
The same thing.
So wait, where in the pilot does that happen? Is that like halfway, or is that early on?
Yeah, it's about halfway.
Okay, then yeah, we don't have to actually mention that in the logline itself. Then he must cover his tracks before he is caught by the authorities or worse. And that's the primary conflict of the pilot, is him just trying to get out of this and like escape unharmed on his own, or is the primary conflict of the pilot him trying to take down this bad guy?
No, he stumbles upon the professor's stuff by accident, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't decide to take them down until later, maybe at the end of the pilot.
Oh, okay. In that case, then, it really does seem like your pilot is all leading up to the premise that's described. Like, the series logline describes the series after the pilot, then, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
I think that the setup is generally working, but the reason the thing that I keep tripping over or getting hung up on is the series logline should, like, the pilot should be an example of what is in the series logline. So maybe if you might want to change one or the other, you might change the series logline to say something more like, when he gets in over his head exposing powerful people, now he's on the run for his life. That kind of show. If it's that sort of thing, that's like a different show. Then vigilante, every episode is going to be taking down some bad guy who's, like, untouchable by the normal authorities. So maybe just sort of tilt it one direction or the other. Is this going to be more like your main character is trying to just survive and get away and get out of trouble? Or is it more like he's going after these crooks. So you maybe just adjust either the series logline or the pilot logline to reflect that a little more.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
What can I ask a question? Would it also help to maybe make sure that it's not just by accident, that there's a reason why he's able to discover these secrets on his professor's computer, not like he just was walking by in a classroom and the computer was open type of thing, so to give that premise more intent.
That might help. I mean, sometimes a coincidence can be an okay starting point. Like, if there's a coincidence anywhere in the story, it should typically be the inciting incident, because we have a sort of like limited mental budget for coincidences, I guess you could say. Here it didn't stand out to be a huge problem for me. I mean, I can think of scenarios in which a student ends up he's fixing some computer problem on his professor's thing or whatever. Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons I could sort of imagine it, so it didn't stand out as a problem for me. But if it is a little more intentional, or I don't think it would hurt the show. So definitely something to consider and think of. Like, typically the less coincidences the better. But here it didn't ring any red flags. You don't ring a red flag. It didn't ring any bells. Didn't ring any red bells. What am I saying? You get the idea.
Yeah, I was just worried because he's going up against these rich and wealthy people who potentially are doing bad things, so they probably have protections in place. So, if he's a hacker, he's probably going to go up against other hackers. So I'm just starting to think it through. It's like, well, he would probably need to be better than his competition to be a vigilante.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'd be excited to see how the show would answer those questions.
I love the word paranoid. I just have to say, it just makes my imagination run.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a good sign if you can imagine the kinds of conflicts that would arise from this combination of a person described like this in this scenario, then that's a sign that something is working well in the logline. So, nice work. Thanks for that one.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure.
So can I say something like he must cover his tracks before he is caught by the authorities while also trying to figure something out, something like that?
You can. I mean, just try not to make the sentence way too long. If it's something you struggle to say in one breath, then it's probably something that is exceeding the optimal length. So there's nothing wrong with adding a little extra clause, but just try not to go on forever.
Okay.
Thanks, Summer. Let's look at another one. We have a bunch more to choose from. Thanks for posting, everybody. Let's go to Amanda with Dilroy.
That's a placeholder name.
Okay.
So I haven't figured out. I mean, I started kind of sketching out a pilot a while ago, but I haven't thought about it for a while. So I'm not sure whether it's going to be totally episodic, totally serialized, or a mix.
Okay.
So that you might have some good questions to. Maybe the answer is there, and then, it's animated, so fantasy, adventure, comedy.
Okay.
And then, okay, so the series logline. I've never tried to even create one, so this is all just off the cuff.
Okay.
Dilroy, considered by the wizarding community to be the greatest wizard of all time, bumbles his way to defeating the darkest forces in the world.
Okay.
And then the pilot logline. So that I didn't know what it was going to be about until you literally asked me right now. So, because the pilot logline was originally kind of the series logline. And that, I have two versions of it. One kind of shows what the joke is, and the second one is a little more ambiguous, and I'm not really sure. So the first one is an absent-minded wizard mistakes a group of non-magical kids for the chosen ones to defeat the dark sorcerer Malgor, who is on the verge of casting a spell that will send the earth into 100 years of darkness. That's a little wordy. I know it could be shortened.
Okay.
And then another one based off of your structure. which I used. When Malgor threatens to cast a spell, sending the Earth into 100 years of darkness, Dilroy the Great goes in search of the chosen ones, foretold in the prophecy to be whatever the ones to stop him. So that one doesn't reveal that the chosen ones are like the incorrect kids.
Right.
So I feel like a merging of those two. I don't know what your take is on that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's take a look. So, let me start with the series. Dilroy, considered by the wizarding community to be the greatest wizard of all time, bumbles his way to defeating the darkest forces in the world. So, I guess the first thing is every letter is capitalized in this for some reason here, which I was
You know what? I've been writing news headlines all day for my satirical news story, and I
No problem.
Okay, sorry about that.
You're good. All right, so the first thing is that there is just sort of a contradiction right in the series logline alone. Why is he considered to be the best in the world if he's going to bumble his way through solving problems? And maybe that's just, I guess you're sort of saying that's the joke, but
Yeah.
I'm just a little unclear as to what that actually means. Does that mean wizards just suck in this world, or does that mean like why? why would this be like? Why would he be considered the greatest ever, but he's actually incompetent?
Right. Right. So I mean, I guess I could say I could have the series logline be more about him trying to keep the gig up while bumbling his way to defeating the darkest forces.
Sure. So you mean like he's tricked everyone into thinking he's a great wizard?
Well, that's good. Well, that's, somebody accidentally if I go into the backstory, say, I'm just guessing, say someone mistakes him for the greatest wizard of all time somehow because he bumbled his way to defeating some great. It'd be like, Harry Potter accidentally defeated Voldemort, and then everyone thinks he's this great wizard.
Yeah.
And so now he has to keep the gig up.
Right.
And I see even another contradiction now, which is how can he be shrewd at keeping a gig up while bumbling his way? So
yeah.
I see a lot of contradictions.
Yeah.
But,
there might be. I mean, there might be something there that sounds like that sounds like it makes sense. That just sounds like a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, it's kind of like Get Smart in the wizarding world.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess we just have to ask yourself, what is the actual conceit? Is it that he's not actually great and he has tricked, or he has somehow lucked into people thinking this is true about him, or is he actually Get Smart, or maybe even you can look at characters like Archer or someone like that, and it's like they actually are very competent, but they have some other trait that is constantly getting in their way. And if it was like that, we might perfectly understand. If it's like he's the greatest wizard ever, but he's getting very senile. Or he's the greatest wizard ever, but he's super forgetful. Or he...
Yes, okay, there we go.
Maybe if you pick one thing that...
Yeah, I think forgetful is a good one for now. Let's just say, forgetful, absent-minded is one of the words that comes to mind. So, the absent-minded professor, right? He's a genius, but he's the wizard in the Disney... the biggest comparison is the wizard in Disney's Sword in the Stone, a little bit.
Sure, okay.
That's the vibe of him.
Okay, so that follows and makes sense because I think that we sort of can easily believe that the more powerful of a wizard that you become, the less interested you become in sort of making sense to mortals and earthlings, and you start to become out of touch the more more into arcane secrets you get. So that seems logically like it would follow. It's sort of a type. I mean, I think we're very familiar with doddering old wizard character or whatever, but it at least all adds
up. Know. Okay. Yeah, it's funny how I'll reinvent the wheel and then it's like, oh wait, there's an archetype for that.
Yeah, it's okay that archetypes are fine. And let me look at the pilot loglines. So an absent-minded wizard mistakes a group of non-magical kids for the chosen ones to defeat the Dark Sorcerer Malgor. So I would just cut the names. First of all, just because we're not going to remember what the names are. Okay. And second of all, just because it's this is just sort of Dark Lord 101 name. So I think that it won't. Yeah, I think you're sort of intentionally angling this towards like the conventions and cliches of the genre, right?
Yeah,
But
and you know, teen plus kind of audience. So you know, you can even go more intense on the archetypes, I think, with the younger audience.
well, are they meant to, is this portal fantasy? So these are non-magical kids from our world, or are these non-magical kids in fantasy world?
These will be yeah, it's a hybrid universe. So there's regular Earth, and then there's a magical community.
Oh,
you know.
there is. Wait, so what do you mean exactly? It's like Harry Potter, where there's like some sort of like how do you travel between our world, or are you saying that they coexist?
Coexist.
They coexist. I don't. How is that possible? There aren't a lot of stories like that, because if they're like, those worlds can't coexist, can they? I mean, it wouldn't. Otherwise, it wouldn't be normal mundane Earth, or it wouldn't be a fantasy world, right? I mean, so are you sort of saying this is like urban fantasy, where there's like cities and cars, but also dragons and things?
So I am leaning towards urban fantasy, or I tend to lean towards urban fantasy. That's a really good question. So there is an option to just have them be the wrong magical kids.
Okay.
Like maybe it is just a fantasy magic world, and they're the wrong magical kids, and that's the pilot. But my original idea was that, like, he's so out of touch. So basically, they're these goth kids, right? That are, so, you know what? It might have to be a universe. And so he's going around the universe and lands on Earth, and he mistakes the goth kids for magical. Because, you know, goth kids have crystals and, like, you know, all those crystals. So he's going to mistake these new age kids for being magical. That was originally going to be the premise, which was him and the kids against the dark forces of the world, and the kids aren't magical, and so each episode they have to come up with like an actual real world inventive plan that works so well that it almost appears magical. Okay, that was going to be like the challenge of each episode.
That sounds pretty funny, but it just doesn't sound like the show that was originally written here. I see. Okay.
Now with these questions, I was like, well, maybe that'll just be one episode. It's about him, and he finds these kids, and maybe the pilot, or maybe the premise, my original premise, is really just the pilot. So these are all good questions.
Okay.
I'm figuring it out as I go. So this is
sure. Understood. Yeah, you might just have to put it back in the oven for a little bit, just to like figure out exactly what it would be. I mean, I like both of those separate premises. That just sounds like two very different shows.
I agree. Yeah.
If it's going to be like Wizard comes to Earth, then and teams up with normal kids. Have you seen a movie called Psycho Gorman?
No.
It's actually might be kind of along the lines of if that's the sort of show that it's going to be. That's a movie that came out a couple years ago and is really funny, and is sort of a sci-fi fantasy comedy about, there's two kids who there's like a sort of Power Ranger villain, like a space alien with magic powers that crashes into their backyard, and then they sort of force him to be their best friend, and they so it's like really crazy costumes and effects and stuff. It's like a dark comedy from a couple years ago. But that would sort of be the vibe to me, if it's like normal kids team up with essentially fantasy character from a story, and then have to either start to learn how to use magic too, or at least use their own street smarts or whatever mundane Earth skills to take on whatever other evil is now also threatening Earth, because either they would then have to go to the fantasy place, or the dark thing has to come to Earth, or else it's not going to make sense, right?
Right.
So just some suggestions there, and maybe just one of your comps if you're looking for comps. I mean, another. I was at first thinking this is like Disenchanted, or Disenchantment.
That was another one that I thought about the vibe of that a little bit, but
and if it's going to be more focused on a secondary world, then that might be a comp to use. But if it's going to be based on the real world, then I think you might just need to experiment with comps a little bit and find, or well, first of all, just cement what the idea actually is.
Well, okay.
It'll
one
be easier.
other thing. One other thing, actually, now that you're saying that, so if it's in so there is in the fantasy world, like the Dark Ages Merlin world, there are wizards and there's magic, but not everyone's magical.
Right.
So that's actually the world that would be the world in the first option, which is that the kids are just non-magical kids, but they're goth. in
Right.
this urban fantasy world where it's kind of like Dark Ages. Some kids are, like Disenchantment. Not everyone was magical. Like the king's not magic
Right.
necessarily.
Well, I guess the big difference in that case would just be mostly like culture, right? They wouldn't be like modern day youth. They would be like
Right.
teenagers from medieval fantasy world. Which,
Right.
I mean, you could
right.
angle it. You could just sort of think of something like Shrek. I mean, you could just sort of make them like goth kids in a fantasy world, and you don't have to actually, like, you can make all the rules.
Yeah,
It just has to sort of, like,
has to work.
yeah, it has to work. And comedy sort of allows you to justify something just because it's funny, right? Like, why does Robin Hood do a weird Matrix reference in Shrek 1 and kick a bunch of guards? I don't know, because it's funny. Like, that's sort of just all. You don't need much more than that when it comes to comedy. So, yeah, just some suggestions. Maybe just cook this a little longer and figure out exactly what you want to do. But the basics are there. I mean, the setup's pretty simple and could easily be an entertaining half-hour comedy show.
I have to say, just these questions and giving us such a short time to do it is like so helpful, because it just makes you not have to sit there and try and figure it out. What's the best show that'll, you just guess, and it's like your guess in a minute is better than if you thought about it for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. I find it's that's how, I will a lot of the time try to work like that. And if you spend forever agonizing over multiple choices, chances are something will come along and you'll just be like, oh wait, it's that. Like the fact that you had to agonize so long over the different ones might mean that it's none of them. It's something you have to wait for, something that really excites you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, hopefully that's some good
Thank you.
guidance for now.
Yeah.
And by next week, if you want to sign up for the full course, then just try to nail down exactly what the logline would be.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Looks like we have some more to choose from here, and we have about 35 minutes to do it. So let's look at Carmen with Anything Goods.
Hunter, we can skip mine because I'm not going to be working on it. I'm devoting my time and brain cells to the Widow Slayer.
Oh, okay,
So,
cool.
but I might work on this after that. I just don't want to put too much into it. I know that you're going to ask me a lot of hard questions.
Mhm. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think we might have time, so I'll go with. It looks like we have Lazima. Do we have one more? If we did I skip one? No, I don't think I skipped one. Yeah, so we'll do the other ones first. We might have time for yours at the end, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Trin says she's going to post in a second. Okay, so yeah, we'll start with the others. Let's do. This is Our Home Man with Lazima. This is a comedy show. Go ahead and read this out for us. Are you here, Lazima?
Yes, I am. I was having trouble unmuting. Okay, alright. Title: This is our home, man. John.
Do we have to say it like that in order to
Yeah,
get the full
like-
effect? Okay.
Oh man. Okay. Genre: comedy, smart people meets road trip. Time slot 30 minutes, and it's a premise show.
Okay.
Series logline: when a pair of homeschooled fraternal twins get fed up with the tourists that occupy their hometown of Las Vegas, they go on a cross-country road trip to give other towns a taste of their own medicine.
Okay.
The pilot logline: fraternal twins present their plan to monitor tourist activity to the mayor and find out that they have to take matters into their own hands.
All right. Thanks for this. Let me look at this again. This is what's a road trip? Okay, so it's like a road trip comedy show. When a pair of homeschooled fraternal twins get fed up with the tourists that occupy their hometown of Las Vegas. Okay, so they live in Vegas and they're annoyed by all the tourists. They go on a cross-country road trip to give other towns a taste of their own medicine. Well, what does that mean exactly?
Okay, so like they have tours. The people that come to Las Vegas, they basically went around like disguised as tourists and did interviews with different people and found out where they lived, like where they were coming from. So she have like this whole list of people that they're gonna go to their hometown and then vandalize it like they've been vandalizing their hometown in Las Vegas.
Oh, wait, so they have like a list of victims, or not victims, I guess, but like people they're getting revenge on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think that would need to be in the series logline. It's not that they're... So if you say they're just getting fed up with tourists, that sounds like, oh, I'm annoyed, they're making noise at late at night, they're, just being obnoxious. And then going to different towns to give them a taste of their own medicine, I don't quite understand what that means. It sounds like you're sort of saying they're just going to go there and be annoying tourists themselves, which doesn't really sound like that concrete of a goal, because what's the actual goalpost? But I think you're actually saying they are holding such a grudge against a select number of tourists that they're then going to go and do what exactly? Like sabotage those people's lives? Or are they going to... How do we do this?
Well, I kind of wrote a bunch of stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like Danny and Donald, they're fraternal twins. They live in Whispering Creek Street, Las Vegas, and they live in a pretty decent life. They have a pretty decent life. They help their neighbors, take out the trash, respect their parents. They work at a local library. They're very intelligent and smug, very smug away from their parents. And still, they constantly bring up issues about the tourists. They are disrespecting their homes, and they're disrespecting their home, calling their state the city of sin, performing ungodly acts that they wouldn't do in their own hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So Danny and Donald get a punk rock makeover with tattoos and go a cross-country road trip, hitting the towns of tourists they've interviewed undercover and vandalizing them, having rough sex in public, random townspeople random town people and tagging their city hall. How do you like it? But then they go to these towns and find out that being a hooligan is tougher than they thought, and then they meet like quirky characters that teach them how to be bad. And then while the quirky characters that they meet that teach them how to be bad, they end up destroying, vandalizing their homes, their town by teaching them. So they kind of get the job done just by being just absent-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And also like before they really started getting into like vandalizing mode, they like kind of chicken out at first and like end up helping the town and doing like guilty community service. And then like as the show advances, then they like finally start getting into vandalizing stuff. But they like, it's like they like help out the community first, and then they like start destroying towns as they continue on their like bucket list of all the people that they interviewed. So.
Okay. So I think I understand what you're saying. My main feedback for this is, first of all, this sounds more like Status Quo to me. This sounds more like every episode could just be a self-contained story. I'm not actually seeing where the...
I was thinking that. I was like having trouble, like, it could be something, it could be that too.
Right. There's not a kind of inherent arc or longer-term goal that jumps out to me from just hearing this. This sounds a little bit more like thing of the week. But that's fine. You can always do that. I mean, the way you're describing it sounds to me a little bit almost like a show like Reno 911 or like those sort of semi-improvised, like mockumentary sort of shows. It can maybe kind of be like that. The just in terms of the scope and nature of their goal, it feels more like almost like a web series to me, or like a series of comedy skits rather than a full... multiple, like, are you really seeing multiple seasons of them just going around from town to town of people on this list that they have decided they don't like them, so they're gonna go mess up their towns?
No, like I was like, no, I'm not really seeing that. I'm just like seeing it as like something like fun. I was actually wanting to go shorter than 30 minutes, but just something like really just fun, because like the premise of the show is gonna be like different people. They're gonna have like video of different people that they're interviewing. So each like series is gonna be like the interview that they have with the person is gonna be like really funny because like they act out. So they kind of like reenact all the stuff that they were doing in the show, and they kind of get tripped up by being like nerds and not really knowing how to do it. And then some of the episodes they find like a quirky character like, how do you gotta do this? Like, how are you supposed to do it this way? And they end up getting them to vandalize their own town. And like, hey, spank you very much. Like kind of go to the next town, and then the other town they kind of can't really do it and get caught in doing community service and like stuff like that.
Like, sure, okay. to me, it's still just the level of motivation that the characters have to do this feels kind of petty. I mean, and seems to be part of the joke. But if the character's goal is petty enough, then it stops feeling like we're gonna get multiple years of TV out of it. So if you were thinking less than 30 minutes, that seems a little bit more like this should probably be like a web series, or maybe even animated series of like 10-minute cartoons or something like that, or maybe mockumentary style. I would say this does not exactly sound like a standard half hour, especially not premise sort of show to me. If you want to write this as a half hour full like pilot for a TV show, find a stronger motivation for them doing this. So maybe a stronger motivation ? And that might be a tourist like throws a party in their house when they rent it out on Airbnb, and as a result their mom has a heart attack when she comes home or something like that. Now they're going to try to track down that tourist and get revenge. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but you can see why that would be something that they're more motivated to do than just, I don't know, we don't like tourists, so we're just going to go annoy them, basically. So like maybe giving them one stronger central target that would take a longer time to either find, or maybe maybe they have a list of everyone that attended that first Airbnb party, and now they're going to track, like almost like a dark version of My Name is Earl, where like we're going to find each of these people on this list and mess up their lives, I guess. So yeah, maybe a stronger motivation for revenge can make this feel a little bit more substantial. And if not, then it should probably just be like a 5 to 10 minute long sketch show.
Or it can be a movie.
Sure, yeah, or maybe a movie. If it was a movie, then either their goal should still be stronger, or maybe as they embark on this quest, then something really big happens early on that they're forced to then, respond to as the inciting incident. The inciting incident might be one of them gets arrested or something like that, right? And now the other one has to.
That's how I started it. I mean, I already started the script but it was like a movie form, and Danny was like voice overing. She's like, I know movies kind of start like this, but I promise you that it's not going to end like this. At least I hope so. And she like saying her brother, they're like in the police department, and her brother's on the floor in the cell screaming.
Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, I could see a movie version of this too. But does that feedback make sense for just the pilot version, the half-hour version of this?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I was like, I definitely don't see this as like season after season, but
right.
Yeah, most likely to be like a movie.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lazima. You have a lot of different ideas, don't you? You have so many. Every class, you have like a brand new idea. But that's great. That's good. You should. I mean, that means you're in the right place, basically, if you're always coming up with more ideas. Thanks, Lazima. Okay, so we have time for a couple more. Let me pause for questions, though, on anything we've talked about so far, anything about the format of the class, anything about loglines or pilots, or what would you guys like to know before we go on to our next student logline? Will we be able to see each other in the class? Normally I'm the only one that uses a camera. Every once in a while somebody will join a class with the camera on, and normally very quickly they're like, uh-oh, no one else is doing this, I'm turning mine off. So you're not disallowed from having your camera on. If you want to, you can. Normally it's just audio from students and video from me, though. Other questions? Okay, should we just go right on to our next loglines then? We have about 20-something minutes left. Looks like we have Trin with No Ordinary Love.
Okay. You want me to read it then?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the series logline is a traumatized teen newly suffering from clinical lycanthropy, belief that he can turn into a werewolf, becomes obsessed with hunting for the vampires he believes killed his parents. So, and then for the pilot, upon getting transferred to yet another facility, a 17-year-old orphan realizes this may be his last chance to prove he can go on to lead a normal adult life in the outside world. He sees the girl of his literal dreams and stumbles upon a diary that seems to portray his parents' last days.
Okay, thanks for this. It says in the description this is a miniseries adaptation of the Twilight movies, but I've seen the Twilight movies, and this doesn't sound like them at all.
Well, yeah, it's a spin-off, right? I'm trying to do a spin-off.
Oh, but
based
why?
off.
But why do a spin-off when you could just make it like this? You could just change a couple names and it would be original.
Yeah, and maybe I will, but right now it's given me the inspiration to write it in the first place.
Okay.
You know, I'm basing it off of their characters, their storyline,
Right. Okay.
their world of vampires and werewolves.
Okay. I think we've seen some critically successful examples of what can happen with Twilight fanfiction when you just change a couple details. So it's clearly possible. I would recommend whenever you can. I mean, if you have to go out of your way to make something similar, like to link something to an existing property, most of the time you're better off just having it be original. But if this is fun for you, and if this is what you really would like to, if this is helping motivate you to work on it, then that's all right. All right, fantasy thriller, 1 hour premise show. Okay, Twilight movies meets Riverdale. A traumatized teen newly suffering from clinical lycanthropy. He's newly suffering from the belief he can turn into a werewolf. Becomes obsessed with hunting for the vampires he believes killed his parents. So all the believing things are kind of tripping me up a little bit. The belief he can turn into a werewolf. The vampires he believes killed his parents. Why are we just believing things? What's going on there?
Because everybody else in the real world thinks he's just going crazy.
Right. But wait, so can he actually turn into a werewolf or no?
Well, we don't know yet, but yes, as it goes on, he will. Yeah.
As it goes on, meaning
but at the beginning, what's that?
In the pilot?
No, he won't turn into a werewolf yet. Then he just has a lot of werewolf tics, like scratching behind his ears and
like Teen Wolf.
like that.
Are you sure you want to have a werewolf show where the main character doesn't turn into a werewolf in the pilot?
Like, I think there'll be hints that he actually can, right? Like he'll see. I don't know. There'll be hints that he actually can, but I think at the beginning you don't know if he's actually just crazy.
I mean, I like that. That's a fun way to start, where they actually, like, we start with a Twilight type story, but the main character might just be nuts. That's pretty funny and entertaining. But if we don't have him turn into a werewolf in the pilot, that reads to me like the audience would be like, where's the show? Like, it's like having a murder mystery where there's no murder.
Yeah, he's at least going to think he is. So I could do point of view things from, his perspective, like he is a werewolf, right? Like, but you might not know.
There's no way the story would work where the werewolf character turns into a werewolf, and because the pilot's supposed to feel like a preview of everything like the pilot is like a trailer for the rest of the entire series. So just no one's going to read any more episodes than just one, and you're almost certainly not going to get a show. So you're just holding back, I feel, some of the main thrills that your genre is offering.
Okay, well, I guess maybe I'm confused with what a pilot is versus episode 1. I thought a pilot was just kicking off the show, but is it more than that?
No, it's well, no. You're correct. The pilot is just episode 1. But if you're not going to get a show, and 99.99999% of all pilots don't turn into multi-million-dollar TV shows, then you're just never going to get to the stuff that you say you're setting up or promising. The pilots are a place where you have to kind of front load the good stuff and remember what the audience is there for, because you're not going to get another chance with them. It's like if you get together all your friends for a magic show and then you spend the whole time explaining what the magic show is going to be, then you're like, all right, we'll see you guys next week. Then they're going to be unsatisfied, I feel.
Is it okay if, like, in the pilot, everybody thinks he's crazy, but he knows he's a werewolf kind of thing, but can't really prove it?
Sure, maybe. I mean, I don't know the specifics of how it unfolds. I guess just it rings that red bell. It's not a term. I'm gonna keep saying it though. It rings a red bell for me when you have a show about something and then you say, but it doesn't happen in the pilot. So it's a show about a guy who's a werewolf, but he's not a werewolf in the pilot. It's just like, well, then when is he one? We're never gonna see him be one then. So it is a point of concern and something to maybe consider. Is there any way that I can give a stronger summation of what the series is going to be in this? Like, it's like a preview. The pilot episode is like a preview sort of all the different thrills that we're going to get throughout the whole series. So like typically, and maybe you've seen some exceptions, and it's not like there's no exceptions, because especially if you watch like a show like Band of Brothers, that's a war show. It's a World War II TV show, right? And in the pilot, they're just in basic training the whole time. And they don't actually go to the war until episode 2 or episode 3 or something. But that's a show that is produced by Steven Spielberg, and it was based on a super successful book. And they know they're going to get all the episodes. So the pilot doesn't have to be as much like a montage of all the cool stuff from the whole series. It can sort of stand on its own a little bit more. But if you only get one, this is like a theoretical preview of a show that doesn't exist. And usually you want to do the thing that it says in the box in the pilot episode. But let me move to the pilot logline here. All right, after getting transferred to yet another facility, I like that intro, a 17-year-old orphan realizes this may be his last chance to prove he can go on to lead a normal adult life in the outside world when he... So this sentence has gotten a little complicated.
Yeah, it is.
So we have upon and a when, so that's kind of two conditional statements right here in the first thing. So you're sort of saying, when this happens, all this, and then when this happens, all this in the same sentence, which can be a bit much. When he sees the literal girl of his dreams, or the girl of his literal dreams, and stumbles upon a diary that seems to portray his parents' last days. Does that mean his parents wrote the diary?
Yeah, no, actually, it is going to be a vampire diary.
So. Oh, I wonder where I've heard that term before.
Yeah, right?
But wait, it's a diary that mentions his parents? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, it does. It mentions their murder, basically. Yeah.
Is it written by the vampire that murdered them?
No. Different vampire. There's lots of vampires in Twilight.
That's true.
Good ones, bad ones.
There are. It's just that in terms of a log line, we sort of want to know how things are connecting and fitting together. You're sort of saying he finds a diary that was left by somebody in the world that happens to tangentially mention his parents' death. I think it's more urgent and exciting or something if it's like he finds his father's journal. Oh, wow, this has a bunch of super pertinent personal information that can maybe help me solve this mystery. Or he finds the diary of the vampire that killed them. Maybe it has some secrets as to are they actually even dead? Are they being kept in a basement as vampire food somewhere? I can just sort of see the story a little more, and it makes sense that the engine just starts to click for me a little more if we understand the connection between these things. If it just sort of sounds like he happens to find this thing.
It's the diary of the girl of his literal dreams.
Oh, okay. You probably want to mention that then.
Okay.
And I'm guessing there's some sort of magic reason why he's seeing her in his dreams or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
werewolves can connect.
Right. So is he in... You say he's transferred to another facility. What does that mean, facility here?
Like it's like one step closer to a psychiatric ward. They're still like evaluating him. Oh, so he's like a ward of the state.
Okay,
you know?
So he doesn't live free on his own. He lives in a state-sponsored...
He's a ward of the state, yeah. So.
Oh, okay. So he lives in like a short-term facility?
Yeah, whatever facilities will take him as an orphan, right? So, especially one that seems to be going crazy.
Right. His last chance to prove he can go on to lead a normal life in the outside world. Why would that be his last chance to prove he can be an adult when he sees a girl?
It's not because if he saw the girl, but because he keeps talking about that he thinks he's a werewolf. That's why he's getting to this more psychiatric level facility that is evaluating him.
And is his transfer here, is that the incident that starts the story? Or
well, that's where he meets the girl.
That's where he meets
and the
her.
diary.
Oh, she's a patient as well? Or not a patient, I'm not sure what they're called.
She's at the facility.
A resident of the... Oh, she's also a resident of the facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorta.
Sort of? What is sort of?
She can come and go as she pleases.
Oh. Okay. So I think just in asking all these questions, I'm unveiling parts of the story that are interesting, but that you just haven't included or haven't really explained in these two sentences.
Say that concisely, right?
Right. Well, so that's the challenge of doing this, is to include all the relevant information and not include any of the irrelevant information. So, but the important things here, I think, are one, that your main character is living in a facility for, I'm guessing, at least the entire pilot. So, two, the girl that is here is also a patient of that, or not, whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called. A resident of that facility.
Yeah.
That's important as well. The idea that this diary is hers is also important. It just seems like we could be tying and connecting these things together. Right now, it feels sort of scattered. But the more I ask questions, it seems like you do have actual answers to these things, and like you do have a better idea of what's actually going on. I think that the loglines just have to sort of reflect what's really going on. Yeah, also he probably should turn into a werewolf in the pilot, but I think I've beaten that horse to death, basically. But
Okay.
anyway, hopefully that gives you some pointers, at least, when you're describing the show, or when you, like, just pitch the pilot in a sentence or two. It should basically describe what we're going to see. So if it's like, oh, this guy moves to a new town. Well, it's not really him moving to a new town. It's sort of him being transferred there, I guess, isn't it? It's about a guy living in a halfway care facility who thinks he's a werewolf. And when he starts to, I don't know, befriend this strange girl that he sees in his dreams, he starts to piece together the clues to his parents' murder. Something like that sounds like what the show that you're doing. But I'm guessing also he's going to have to, struggle to control his werewolfness or whatever. So I hope that, I realize I just gave you like 100 different things to think about, but hopefully that just sort of starts pushing you in the right direction and helping you to simplify and streamline this in such a way that what we're describing is actually what you're going to be delivering. Yeah,
well, it does clarify that a pilot is a little bit more than just an intro or like a kickoff. It has to have more substance.
Yeah, it's tricky. Pilots are usually one of the people's least favorite episodes of the entire show, because it's usually written before the rest of the series is written, so things might change. Sometimes actors change, but the point is that people develop a pilot so long before they work on the rest of the show, because that's the thing that sets the formula for what the rest of the show is going to be, and it sets all the expectations of the kinds of show that this is, because whether or not the pilot tests well is very indicative of if the rest of the show is going to do well. So that means we have to not hold the best stuff back, and you have to, in fact, include as much of the best stuff as possible in the pilot to get people hooked. Excuse me, I have the worst hiccups today. You got to get people hooked and get them coming back and get them committing to, I need to see what happens next. So, yeah, but a lot of the best stuff has to be right front-loaded in the first episode.
Okay.
Any questions on this? All right, all set for now. Thank you, Chen. Alrighty. Now, here's some comments in the chats. Nacho says maybe a mockumentary comedy show about people who think they're werewolves versus people who think they're vampires could be funny. Like nothing supernatural in the entire show. Yeah, it'd be like What We Do in the Shadows meets, I don't know, what would the comp be? What's it? It would sort of be like Letterkenny. It'd be like What We Do in the Shadows meets Letterkenny. That sounds kind of funny. Yeah, you should write that, Nacho. All right. So we have 10 minutes. I have time for one more logline. I could do Carmen's, or we could do somebody else if they have one that they have been holding back on, or they want to share, or maybe you just have questions you want me to tackle. If nobody has any questions, I will do Carmen's logline, or if we don't get any others. Does anyone have something to share? A question or a logline to post? All right, well, Carmen's it is. So we're going to do... I guess you posted a couple of them. Which one do you want to go over, Carmen? We posted Lifer and also Anything Good.
Well, Lifer is and Anything Good is the same thing. I was looking for a title that hasn't already been taken.
Oh, it's the same show. Okay. Should we go over the logline?
Okay.
Great. Can you read it out for us?
Okay. The pilot logline is... Okay, it's drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When an illiterate man incarcerated for 30 years on death row gets a second chance to make it on the outside, the struggle to adapt to the new world presents an urgency to find anything good that will justify the struggle for his new life in a challenging new world. And I know it's really wordy right now. Logline, an illiterate man on death row is granted freedom and finds the new world even more intimidating than life on the inside, leading him on an urgent search for the father he never knew and anything good that can inspire his move forward in the freedom he doesn't feel he deserves.
All right. Thanks for that. Oh, it's a half-hour drama. Pretty rare, but that you can do them. So this sounds like a solid foundation for a show, but it also sounds like a lot of words to just say guy gets out of prison.
Okay.
And like, I think instead of using all these words to explain something that we can already basically understand, like he struggles to adapt to the new world and the urgency to find anything good that will justify the struggle for his new life in a challenging new world. You didn't even really need to say any of that, right? It's a guy gets out of prison and needs to readjust to life after 30 years. We understand. I think that the rest of those words are better suited on highlighting the central relationships. So this is a drama, so I think we need other characters mentioned in here. So perhaps just one central relationship. Is there like an antagonist of some kind? Bring in the other people to this, and you will start to find dimensions. Like everything from here on, I think you could just cut and use these words instead. Use these words to build out the relationships. This sounds. What was that show on Sundance? TV prison guy show. Watch me find it just based on that stupid. There it is. I found it. Oh, I can't believe I typed the worst Google search ever and I found it. All right, Rectify. Have you seen this?
No.
So, this is, was it 6 seasons? No, 3 seasons. An American television drama exploring the life of a man after he's released from prison after nearly 20 years on death row for a wrongful conviction. Is that what's also happening here? Why is your main character on death row for 30 years? Unless, I mean, it must have been a wrongful conviction, right?
It was not a wrongful conviction. There are actually people, men and women, being released from prison currently who are being given a second chance. I wrote a program for the city for this for these kind of people, and I got this idea the other day. My friend is going through a divorce, and her husband is one of those men. And he has previously killed at least one person, and now he's going back to his old ways. So that's one of the inspirations for this. So he goes to live at a sober living community surrounded by men like him, because there are men like this in society now. So they are often placed in inner city neighborhoods with people, people just like them, right? And they call them lifer programs. And he's tempted to drink and do drugs and practice different kinds of magic, black magic. I got that idea from my friend too, because she was telling me that he has been talking about these weird rituals and stuff. And
it's not the doll guy, is it?
Sorry?
This isn't the doll guy, is it?
No, it's
okay. A separate dark magic guy. Okay.
Yeah, I know the stuff is everywhere, I guess. So he must learn how to read, right? Technology is a struggle for him, and therefore applying for a job. He's connected to a counselor who introduces him to a real estate investor and starts learning how to rehab houses. He discovers that one of the investors has previously been charged with manslaughter, meets a pastor and joins a church, which actually is a cult. He learns that it's a cult. He meets some really judgmental people, but a few good ones, but they evolve and become people that, he expects them to be good people, but he's trying to be good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he tries to hide the fact that he has killed. Of course, he runs into people from his past, and finding a female companion in the environment he's been placed in is, who's not crazy is nearly impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
He lies constantly about why he spent time in jail, obviously, right, in order to avoid being shunned, even by the people of the church, the different church communities that he steps into, which he expects more mercy from them, but he doesn't find it. He meets a few, some of those good people who kind of, over time, show their true colors. So in short, he can find nothing good in this world and starts to think maybe it'd be better for him to be back in, in the prison. I think him being on death row is not a good, would not fit this. because as far as I know, none of the well, it doesn't have to be based on reality. I realize that, but it kind of doesn't make sense either. But I don't know of anybody who's come out that's actually on death row, so that's something that wouldn't be probably realistic for maybe a drama. But again, right? Anything goes in
Yeah,
film,
it's
guess.
true. I mean, the audience's question will be, well, why was he on death row? I mean, most people don't get let off of death row unless they're exonerated via, I don't know, DNA evidence or something like that proves that they were in fact innocent. So the fact that you're saying he was in fact guilty of this crime is actually maybe more worthy of the words that you have here rather than the fact that he's, like, illiterate. I mean, is the fact that he's illiterate going to be more of an obstacle to him than the fact that he's convicted of something that got him sentenced to death? I'm not sure. So it feels like just the weight and the importance of certain things are maybe could be adjusted here a little bit. I have a little more feedback on this, but let me just, before people start leaving, because we're almost at the end of class, I just want to tell everyone that you should sign up if you have not already done so for Script Camp. You can go to scriptcamp.net/membership and sign up for your free trial. That's 2 weeks of as many classes and programs and workshops as you want. So definitely, if you are interested in this and you've enjoyed today's class and want to do 5 more weeks on this pilot, we're going to take you through writing it from beginning to end. This is like how to write a pilot 101. Please sign up, scriptcamp.net/membership or /classes if you just want to buy this one course on its own. But you might as well sign up for Unlimited, because then you can do so many other cool programs, and we're adding new stuff all the time, adding new classes, new instructors, new topics, new guests. So yeah, please sign up and check it out, and we'll be glad to have you. Okay, so let me just finish feedback on this, then we'll wrap up for today. So, on Anything Good, this is only 30 minutes. What's the focus? It sounds like you have a lot of ideas for types of storylines in the future of the series, but in a pilot, we're not really going to be able to get through guy leaves jail, acclimates to life in a halfway house, seeks his missing father, ingratiates himself in the community of people he's now met, balances romance and relationships with his old members of his family, and then joins a cult. That's like multiple seasons worth of events. So
Oh yeah, that's what I was kind of just putting out the ideas that I have for an entire season, I guess.
Right. So maybe just in terms of the logline and for the series and for the pilot, just try to find that specificity. Like, what are these first few episodes about? Like, is it going to be about the search for his father? If that is going to be like the focus of the pilot and just like a really big factor of the show, then the loglines should just reflect that a little bit. You say he's going on an urgent search for the father he never knew. Why is it urgent? What is the actual ticking clock? Or, like, I'm not sure. After 30 years, you'd think he'd be okay. But, so what is motivating this reunion? And what kind of complications are causing that, or would that cause, or what obstacles are in the way? Something like that might just be better. So try to just find the focus. If it's going to be mostly about that search, if it's going to be more like a mystery where he's searching for his dad, if it's going to be more about him meeting people in his new community, or maybe it's about this cult storyline that might be more of a mystery thriller or something like that. So, excuse me. Just, try to use your words in such a way that we are expressing what we're mostly watching in the show. We don't have to use a bunch of words on stuff that we could have already guessed. Like, if we're having a series about a soldier who goes to war, it's like, and then he must fight for his life and defeat the enemy so that he doesn't die himself, and hopefully achieve victory so he can go back home. It's like, yeah, he's in a war. That's what we understand, that's what you have to do. So, guy gets out of jail. Okay, we can already assume a bunch of stuff. Now find the focus and help us understand, what is this show? It's about this part of this guy's life, where he'll be trying to find his missing dad, who's also a cop or something. Like, whatever interesting contrast is between them, maybe use your words to build out the cast and their relationships a little bit more.
Okay.
Thanks for this, Chen. We're going to wrap class now, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming by. If you have questions, I will stay on just for a minute to answer them, but feel free to head out. And for next week, the assignment is work on your logline as much as you can. Try to get a final version of it by next time. And make sure to sign up before next class. And we'll see you then. So I'll stay for a minute to take questions, but we will call it here. Thanks for coming by, folks. Hope to see you around Script Camp soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so how many acts is in a 1 hour drama? Because I thought it was three, but then I read the screenplays of like Breaking Bad and a few others, and it's like that one has like four or five.
It's five, yeah. So normally it's going to be five. It's a little confusing just because it's kind of difficult to think in terms of 5 acts because not very much media follows that exact format. And it can feel a little antiquated when you're like, oh, those are the commercial breaks, basically. If you look at it, if you take a step back, it still is essentially 3 acts. Like, even though it's written out as 5, if you just, carve it up into 3 sections, it's basically going to follow 3-act format. So don't let the number itself throw you off too much. It's not going to be terribly different from writing a 3-act story.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Nacho says, anyone have questions how to fill out your sketchbook or how to join the class? We're glad to answer any of those, or I'll take any other questions at all.
Yeah, I was curious about the membership. What kind of discounts do we get? So, like, I'm looking at the TV Pilot Bootcamp.
Mhm.
That's $195, and is the $175 the price for if you're a member, or that's just the sale price, or how does that work?
Go ahead,
to
Nacho.
purchase the TV Pilot Bootcamp by itself is $175,
Okay.
or the membership is $49 a month. So it's a little bit better deal with the membership, and you can attend all the classes, and also there is a discount.
So you don't have to pay for the class if you're a member, or
That's
do you
right.
have
Exactly.
To
Unlimited includes all the classes, and it includes a discount on coverage or on
wow.
script consultation. So
Okay.
let's see.
Yeah, if you're an unlimited member, you go to everything on the server. It's like an all access ticket. What do you call it?
Okay.
All access pass.
Got it. And then so you pay per month. So like if I did this 5 weeks, I'd pay obviously at least 2 months. Or do you pay for a year's worth? Or how does that, like, do you commit to a year, or can you pay month to month, or how does that work?
Yeah, the year is a little bit cheaper. It's actually like $29 a month for the
Okay.
year option.
But if you're
you
just
go-
kind of testing it out and you're kind of like not quite sure yet and you're still figuring things out,
yeah,
I would do
so-
maybe the month to month, or
That's fine. Yeah, I don't think we've had anyone buy
Okay.
a full year yet, but
Yeah.
it's an option.
okay.
when you sign up, there's no charge. It's a 2 weeks free trial. You can try whatever you want,
Oh, I see.
and then
Okay.
after the 2 weeks, if you want to continue, then it's $49 a month.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, so I would want to sign up before obviously the next session for this. Unless I decide I want to do the rewrite, but I think this is better.
It-
Try something.
So it includes the rewrite class as well. It includes all the
Okay.
classes. So.
Yeah, and they
Oh,
cycle
so-
they cycle around. So like if
Right.
the rewrite class has already started, you can just wait a few weeks and a new one will get going.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That's good. Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you.
Great course. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks
Okay.
for coming by.
Bye.
And-
Didn't you just back on that other slide with the consultation versus the script proofread? Can you kind of go into the differences of like what you do in each? Like, would you want both perhaps even, or does one one more comprehensive, or?
So for proofread is more common. When I have had people buy this before, it's been non-native speakers who just want to go through and make sure that all the phrases and punctuation and everything are making sense. It includes a markup of your pages and also just ensuring that your text is like clear and the dialogue is natural. And we're fixing any formatting issues on the page. So if you're worried about the words themselves just not adding up and making sense, then proofread is probably the best choice. Consultation is going to include like markup of all your pages, so I go through and leave sticky notes throughout the script, and then you have a half-hour call where I go over the biggest points, and you can ask whatever questions you want.
Okay, thanks. That helps.
Sure. Any other questions from me or Nacho?
Also, in about 1 hour, we have table reads starting up.
Mhm.
So we're going to be doing student scripts and reading through, reading parts. And we have kind of like a reward system here on the server where if you read some parts or you give feedback, you get what we call script coins. And then you can use those to get like free stuff. Like you can get a coffee cup or, script camp t-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're around, this is going to be starting in about 1 hour. This is the table reads, and we do this every Sunday, so you can always join us later.
Thanks, folks. If there's no questions left, we will call it here. Last questions?